All right, I'm back. Back from a little break there, which kind of went on a lot longer than I expected. Although I should expect that. Again, I'm just sitting here pondering, thinking about things, letting things flow through my mind, and kind of just resisting hitting the record button, just because I don't know exactly where I want to go with what I want to say. All I know is I need to dive back into the strike point domain. Continue articulating a few more things here. I feel like we're almost at the end of almost having exhausted my my vision for where I could go with this particular strike point domain. All that we really have left so far from what I've planned is just to get a bit more into the sorcery of the spectacle, a little bit more relevance to the subreddit. What is sorcery of the spectacle, etc. I've already been filling out quite a few details about left-right politics, this kind of identity politics, the interface of the broadcast media with stuff like this identity politics, with this kind of social APS, this shared APS, this I guess that this concept itself is related probably to the Overton window, the sort of domain of normality, of what society as a whole can kind of expect and deal with and manage, as far as the broadcast communications coming at it, what it can manage. So this is kind of a shifting, sort of like a shared APS through time, shifting through time. And again, so all of this is kind of painting a picture of the ways in which we are controlled by mass media, just by our inner thoughts, the way that our own APS works and has solidified to certain concepts. So this is related to computational propaganda. I'm not sure if I've gotten into enough detail about that and about how it works. But I'm gonna, I guess, go ahead and maybe probably just give a little bit more of a description or a recapping up of the APS, how it functions, and I want to illuminate how masses of populations are controlled by basically our biases that are built into our so-called reality, our reality tunnel, or the current configuration of our APS, especially in a participant coherent society, where that APS is not exactly fluid and dynamic, and the skill for navigating the APS and updating it, and again giving respect and a relationship to those things which it points to, with which the APS interfaces the outside world. In a participant coherent society, we don't, each as individuals, we are not granted or given that facility to dynamically navigate that which is around us. And so when we are given signals, they have a strong, solid meaning to us. So when we are told stuff like facts over broadcast media, they can simply line up in our perception, in our cognition, in certain ways that are basically acting as a program, that we are programmable. It's like simply variables are being set up, and in the composition of the broadcasts which are being created, there's this sort of statistical analysis of the hive mind, so to speak, of the Overton window, of what people are thinking and what objective needs to be done overall, en masse, out of the whole. And it's from this statistical sort of view that the APS does what it always does and tries to do, except from a social point of view, broadcasting out to the masses, we are making these over extreme simplifications of reality, so to speak, and via broadcast media we are projecting it out onto ourselves, out onto the mass of people, to be interpreted in a very, very simplistic manner. Again, this is, I mean, it should be obvious, but when you're in it, when this is your reality is working like this, and everything is black and white and simplified, we don't really perceive the conflicts and the pain that we're sensing. We don't see it as something that has anything to do with us inside, with anything that we should change, but this feeling becomes redirected outwards. And so the conflict in our minds is never with ourselves and with our own mind. That's not where the problem is coming from. That's not why we're sensing pain. Of course, this is always redirected outwards, and this is part of the program in relation to computational propaganda. So we are able to manipulate ourselves en masse via broadcast injections of a setting up of the program, almost like a mini strike point, you could say. Just setting up the scene, setting up the variables, queuing up and loading up memories. And again, in a sort of statistical way, there is no relationship with you as the consumer of a broadcast. It's more like you as a general vague set of categories into which you are being shoehorned, and of course into which your own cognitive processes are relating and interacting, and basically you get a reaction out of this. So if the computational propaganda is crafted in a way that it hits the right triggers in enough people, this is kind of a statistical unfolding. If enough people successfully receive the arc of the intended strike point, so to speak, then we could call this propaganda a success. So if the desired reaction comes out, if people have the desired behavior, so there's certain specific behaviors that are trying to get out. I mean, advertisement is just a simple example. The behavior is that you go and buy the thing. The behavior is that you feel suddenly that you are insufficient, that you are incomplete, and that you require a product to complete yourself. And of course, this journey of completion and completing of the self via outside means is a never-ending search, a never-ending desiring. In this way, we are desiring to complete ourselves always by fulfilling our consumer obligation, being by doing what we are told by advertisement, and all the ways that we can fix what's wrong with us by consuming various products. That's just a basic example. We don't realize that essentially our news broadcasts and the ways that politicians talk to us, the ways that we interact with the state, with GovCorp, this is basically all the same thing. We as ourselves, our internal being, the unique individual that we are, is essentially lost in this machine. And again, we see the reflection of disembodiment within the individuals, between the mind and body, the same reflection we see as the society just overbearing and trying to control the individual in a very ham-fisted way, in a way that does not respect the nuances of the body and its constraints. In the same way, we are never respected. Our nuances are never respected. We have no way of communicating. And so computational propaganda is just a fact of participant society. This is how our behaviors are controlled in a very simplistic manner, and of course reality on the ground, so to speak, from our perspective is always way more complex. And so we're highlighting again the difference between a membership society and a participant society. In the membership society, we take into account all of our inner sensors, our inner awareness of the environment, of our situation, of our context, and we're able to feed that back into the whole to make the whole better, to build up better culture, to feed back information from 1,000, a million-fold times more complexity, more apprehension of complexity by the society. So again, the what we see in the APS with the calcification and crusting up, especially as we get older, we lose that flexibility, that dynamism, that feedback and that communion between our APS and the environment. And the problem being that things crust up, they crust over. And of course, life as it's being presented to us never stops changing. There's never a stop to it, to change. We in fact must retain that childlike wonder, which is again part of that animistic type respect of our world and our environment, everything around us as being unknown to us, but we're developing a relationship with it. This always has to be there, and if it's not, it results in pain. And of course, we are seeing the absolute climax of pain all around the world as this participant society and its ham-fisted approximations of reality, which are crusted and not changing and not updating, are being applied over the earth, applied over all of the people of the earth. And we ourselves are participating in it through ignorance, through not realizing and not knowing of our potential, and yet, of course, the pain that's being inflicted on our collective body is causing us to wake up, is causing us to come alive and look inward and meditate and question this and see why are we enslaving ourselves? Why is our mind enslaving our body? Why do we do this to ourselves? And then why are we doing this? Why is our society doing this to us as individuals? As above, so below. And here we have again the wicked problem illuminated, that when you wake up, that when you become a member of society, as opposed to a participant, you have the problem that everyone around you is doing the participant thing, and they're all doing the approximate behavior thing, and attempting to obey the letter of the law while failing to obey the spirit, and just extruding hypocrisy is just the stench of hypocrisy all around. And so we need to bootstrap the membership society. It is emergent, it's emerging, it's coming up out of our collective emergence from this fever dream of hell that we have descended into with the fall of man, and the war to begin and end all wars, which is going hot due to this emergence. The emergence cannot be stopped. Of course, I mean, it's impossible to make any predictions one way or another, but I will always err on the side of life, err on the side of affirming life, of negentropy. When I make a prophecy or a prediction, or say that something is happening or going to happen or is underway, I do not make any points of going down the road of fear, which we all know what can happen. We all know that this earth can be barren, and we all know that there are thousands, millions, an infinite number of other planets out there, out in space, and this is ours, and God help us to bring His kingdom. So what is the sorcery of the spectacle? I think I went over this already. I'm just going to try and make sure that I got everything covered, maybe stated in a different way. So sorcery, if we're going to take a basic definition of magic, it's the manipulation of will, specifically the manipulation of your own will. It's like, for example, like how to set up healthy myths, or how to make how to build up momentum in your own commitments, like how to tell yourself stories that get you to places that you want to go. Yeah, so your will and what you're doing in the moment can be self-shaped. So there's that kind of feedback potentiality, and this is kind of the domain of magic, in a very simplistic sense. And so that domain doesn't really explicitly contain or deal with, I suppose, the manipulation of others, the manipulation of the will of others. And so this, at least from my experience and this simplistic kind of definition I'm going to use, this is where sorcery comes in. Sorcery is the manipulation of the will of others. And I mean, we can call both of these magic or whatever. And then this kind of brings up another slight nuance to this, is that you could say that if you are implementing sorcery on somebody else for the effect of bringing them into participation and thereon it towards membership. So in other words, if we're using sorcery to try and spark that life force in somebody else, that self-guiding life, self-referential life force of the which is to embark on the journey of increasing coherence. That's something we could categorize as white magic or white sorcery. And then of course dark sorcery is everything we've seen to deal with the priest class, sort of manipulation of participant culture for the materialistic human use of other humans. Basically, so it's not a liberatory type of sorcery. It's a sorcery, the manipulation of the will of others, for the purpose of use, for the conditional use, for the control of others. So I mean, and we don't really realize how deeply demonic our society is, but even if you pay somebody to do something for you, like pay somebody to mow your lawn, to make it perfect green, a nicely cut, manicured lawn, a perfect representation of wealth, as if you're doing well and your lawn is great. So you've paid somebody to do that for you. You may think you're doing them a favor, and sure, in a short-term sense, you kind of are, because without that income they will have nothing, and they will end up dying. But really, this is just a mediation and a separation of ourselves from the reality of the situation that we are still in, a modern day slavery type of situation, and money is how it's done. We all know, most of us know, that feeling of not having enough money. It's like a constraint or a damper on our on what we believe is possible, materialistically speaking. So this can be a major factor in depression. And if you've ever noticed, when you gain access to credit and suddenly have money, you get this manic feeling, this mania, like you can do anything, and really to some extent materialistically you can, and some of us, maybe most of us, can't really handle that and tend to just blow it off, blow it away, and then before we know it, we're back to this depression. We can feel it viscerally in our behaviors, that we feel like nothing is possible. We don't feel like we're walking on sunshine, or don't feel like going outside or talking to anybody, because our whole world of possibility has been closed off. And so just pointing to that that fact of how money controls our lives and our behavior and our mood and our feelings of depression or mania. It's like a lever, a switch on that, and indeed, if we do not have it to an extreme, we will be out on the street. We will be without shelter. We will be literally dying. So that feeling of depression is that feeling of getting towards hopelessness, helplessness, and as I've said, when we pay somebody to do a service for us, this is the modern day form of slavery, and it's a certain type of economy, a certain type of interaction, which is not, which is in a greater context of a society which does not care about the individual. This is the participant society, and of course I know that I'm already triggering just by saying this kind of stuff. All kinds of thoughts like, well, you have to have trade, you have to have free trade, and well, you have to work for a living and you have to work for what you get. I'm not denying any of that. I know that life has always been work. No matter what society you're in, there is always work to do, even if you're just in a presence of being, and having, go out and pick some food whenever you want, or hunt whenever you want to, or maybe somebody else will do it today, kind of stuff. There's always been work to do, and I think it's probably a part of human nature, and even just the nature of life, to try and avoid work or just maximize their efforts, conserve energy, etc. So, I mean, we could get into a lot of things here, but the point is to see this as a underlying kind of spiritual warfare. And I'll come back to the example of a church with a mortgage. Just quickly, it shifts the whole thing. The entire effort, it becomes like, if we don't make money, this thing is gone, and I'm out of a job, and you're out of a job, and we all don't come here anymore. So therefore, how can it be about the spirit unless we are truly sacrificing and just burning up and using what we have to the glory of God, even if it leads us to the end? And this kind of faith is actually what brings the spirit back. So ironically, in some ways, that thirst after money and after tithing can just leave such a bad taste in people's mouths. They realize the hypocrisy. They're not seeing the spirit moving. They're not seeing the church acting in faith, even though there's money is on the table and a problem. And so that's kind of the irony of a church which is forced to go after money and yet still can't manage to act in faith and let the spirit guide, and really do God's work on earth, and truly earn the gift of the congregation, the gifts of the congregation, by inspiriting them, by enlivening them, by being a meaningful church, by drawing more in, by gathering more together, by movement of that spirit. So again, just trying to give example of the spiritual warfare and the absolute depths of evil that have infiltrated all parts of our society. We don't even realize how demonic we are, and it's a spiritual warfare. There's nobody is at fault here. It's just that these things don't become clear until we achieve a membership in society. So, sorcery of the spectacle. The title here, I guess, so the title of the subreddit, we're kind of getting at the capital S spectacle. So we're talking about this participant society, this breakaway civilization. Specifically, we're kind of referencing, when we say the spectacle, we're kind of referencing the just the representative nature of everything, and that underlying deception behind everything, and just the image that's put up by all of society all around us. And again, this is the factor of participation. That representing is the most important thing at this point. It's the only thing that we have left to hold on to, is the image, because we don't know what the substance is like. Our cultural memory has forgotten it. The traditions have died. We're sitting on massive cultural voids, and so all we have left is representation. This is through which the spectacle operates, and this is basically like visual computational propaganda. We're seeing signs, we're given signs and shown signs, which supposedly have a strict agreed upon meaning, which doesn't change or doesn't need to be looked into. When somebody has a nice clean lawn, we say that means that they are well off and they're doing well. Meanwhile, we don't know them, we don't know their depression, we don't know how alienated they feel by this society that makes them try to look good when they feel bad. And like everybody has this struggle going on, and it's just we're at a breaking point, I think. And as well, just bringing back that the cultural progression of the last I don't know, whatever, 70 years, especially into this postmodernist era. So all we have left is representation. We're being manipulated by signs, basic, to speak basically, or give a little bit of language regarding signs. We're talking about the study of signs, the study of symbols. This is an endeavor called semiotics, or a science called semiotics. It's the study of symbols, and basically we have what is it? Am I gonna get? Anyways, how I usually use this anyways is, so we have a sign. So sign, signifier, and signified, and I just brought this up in my head. I haven't thought about it, even if I'm going to be able to go through it. I know it's basics. So sign is a certain assemblage of symbols together in an artifact loaded up into the memeplex, which we recognize as a certain meme. So it co-arises with meaning itself. So that green lawn, it's linked in with that meaning of maintenance of the environment, of being in good standing. All these other things pop up when we see the sign of the green lawn. Green lawn. So the APS through its development, we're getting these metastatic regions of intersection between narrative composition points of narrative, in which types of things have interacted with other types of things, and then we know what a car is, what a wheel is, what an engine is, just based on our experience of the flow of things through time and how they relate together. And so the symbol, or the sign, is a list. It can be a list. We can have many different names for the same thing, which is pointing to one of these metastatic nodes in the neurological network. And this is to us a thing. This is a type of thing. So a car is a type of thing. A lawn, a cut lawn, a manicured lawn. This is another thing, and so this can be a symbol for wealth, and or being well off, and so that's the sign or the symbol, and just trying to put this together. You know, maybe I'll look at that later. But so essentially what we're trying to get at is this relationship between types of things, between symbols or signs, and what it is intended to signify. So wealth, for example, so that lawn means wealth. That manicured lawn, or that gold chain around the neck, is supposed to signify wealth. It's supposed to represent wealth. And wonder if I'm gonna look that up. No, don't worry about it. Semiotics. So kind of the key here, what I would want to get at anyways, is that what we think it means is not what it actually means. Like if we take any kind of meditative or contemplation about what's being signified here, we can see that it's often completely disjointed, has nothing to do with anything. For example, the manicured lawn is just a sort of status symbol. So it's a symbol intending to signify wealth and to signify having an organized and orderly life. But the reality of it is that many people just do it because they don't want to be singled out as not having that the lifestyle or whatever is supposed to be represented by that, the wealth. So, I mean, we can go to simpler examples like a stop sign on the road. It's a red octagon. That's the sign. That's the symbol. And what is signified by it is that when you see it, it means that the process to be followed in that area of space is one in which you come to a stop and make sure that it's safe to proceed. So you're having a junction or an intersection between multiple vehicle paths, and this is simply it's signifying a sort of change in the current rules of the space-time that you're inhabiting or moving through. The rules are changing here now. Instead of simply a speed limit, you must come to a stop. That's what's being signified. I'm just going to pause it for 1 second, just look that up and see if I can, flesh out the point here of semiotics. I think I've pretty much covered it as far as what I want to get into, which is that it supposedly signifies something, and if we look closer, we see it actually has nothing to do with that in many cases. And this is always the discrepancy that we will find between the APS and the spectacle. Always that discrepancy. We need to be careful to give our situations and our context the respect that it deserves in order to be navigated properly and to navigate with love, with a life force, with a spirit in effect. So I'll be right back. Okay, so not that it's actually too relevant, I guess, to my endeavors here, but so what I was saying is a sign is actually, I believe, a signifier. So this is the abstract. This is the lawn. This is a manicured lawn. This is the stop sign. So a red octagon. This is in abstract the abstraction of it is the signifier. This is what holds the meaning of the signified, which means that one stops at that stop sign, or it means that one has wealth. That's what's being signified by a nice manicured lawn, which is the signifier, and the sign. I guess in this paradigm, or semiotics paradigm, the sign would be more or less your actual encounter with it. So to see that green lawn, you're seeing a sign of wealth. Whereas in the abstract, the signifier itself is simply a green lawn, manicured lawn. Seeing a sign is a concrete manifestation of a signifier. And what's being signified is that abstract meaning of it, the meaning behind it, the meaning which you're supposed to gather. And so again, what we're seeing here is that this extreme advancement of participant society, the hollowing out, the harvesting and hollowing out of organs, all that's left in life is in a fully commodified life, commodified and exploited, is the representation of things, not the substance themselves, substance behind them, but mere representation. And in this way, for example, like broadcast media, billboard advertisements, even our culture to ourselves and amongst ourselves, using social media, just flashing these signs to each other, status symbols. In this way, we are interacting in a very simplistic manner, in a very mechanistic manner, and again, so this is all basically founded. This is the foundations of computational propaganda, the manipulation of each other based on very simplistic apprehensions of reality, and not to mention a cognitive process whereby perception is bound up into a more or less static and non-dynamic way of navigating reality, of basically giving no respect to anything by the mind, to the unique details of each moment of experience of our context, in which no two things are ever the same. We kind of wash over this whole thing with this simplistic image, and this is what the mind does in the participant society. It never sort of transcends that and gets into the real sort of communion with life, with our surroundings, with everything we're interacting with. We are projecting our reality on top of it, just as the projections of the broadcast media are being projected onto us, that we are merely and completely alienated from the processes, just that we are commanded and interacted with by the state as an agent, as a mere agent for completing instructions. And these instructions are crafted using statistical analysis and insane technologies now, which are able to very deeply gain insights into the different regions of our APS, the different facets of our culture. You could say that there is no single overton window, for example, but that there are many different. even politics, left wing, right wing type politics. You'll have different value sets, and all of this is becoming very, very known to big data, very well sensed by big data, and of course, this information are peering into our minds, getting us to do these stupid personality tests of what type of this character are you, or what type of that character are you. Every time you participate in such a thing, you feed the beast, you feed the machine, and you allow it to control you with ever finer articulations and ever better predictive control of your mechanics, the mechanics of your APS. And again, the only way out of this is not a political thing at all. It's to take up the responsibility of life, by which is your birthright, that the facilities of your mind point towards this potential for a dynamic relationship between your mind and its surrounding, its environments, first off including your body and its context, the body which you yourself have been alienated from, and which you push and shuffle through the world from task to task, with hardly a care for its maintenance, except for the bare minimum. And so I'm over generalizing here, but in order to illustrate a point. So, sorcery of the spectacle. I think that's almost it. So, and I think throughout this I've given enough context and information about the APS to kind of help answer what is the APS, and getting into the metastatic nodes of the neurological network, and just quickly referencing back to the point about the pragmatic triad of process, constraint, protocol. So this is where the APS lives. This is what kind of things that it this is the way in which it sort of accumulates or collects information, as in general processes. So the narratives, the stories of life that we go through, we're slowly, as we learn, gathering information about how to deal with, how to navigate life, how to navigate different behaviors. And that's what it's all about. It's not about totally disembodied abstractions of what is this part and what is that part of the system. Everything is embodied, actually, and everything has to be navigated with the body and mind. This is what science is realizing, and again we have here with the birth of second order cybernetics, that acknowledgement. So the APS is the abstract phase space, and what we have here are generalized processes going on, which have been shaped through the experience of the neurological network to properly sustain constraints. So things that in the past have gone wrong, we get traumatized, or we feel pain, or we sense a discomfort, or we see that something has not gone as expected with our model. So therefore we must adjust the model, and we do this by adjusting our protocols. So in other words, with little pieces and facets of this process that's going on, whatever instructions we generally tell ourselves of how to do things and do little parts of it, we kind of keep in mind these heuristics of in order to sustain this, to make sure this never happens again, we do this. And it's kind of in that's kind of the format of the protocol. And this is just like, I guess, a collection of like heuristics. I'm not sure if that term is too oversimplified for this concept, but it seems to fit with what the protocol is. So again, the program takes protocols executed through time. The program is an assemblage of protocols into a meaning of something through time. a back and forth between a model and a concrete context. This is what programs dynamically navigate. So getting back to the pragmatic triad, we have protocols, whether we acknowledge them or not. This is how our mind is functioning in the abstract. These are the most concrete representations of the abstract phase space that we can express. And again, what our mind and body is doing is implementing processes through our narrative, and the processes get better and better as our narrative goes on, and this is the process of life. This is the ongoing unfolding of life. And so that's what the APS is. I've stated, I'll get into another point that I've made in the past, that there is kind of an internal APS or a meat APS that I've called, and then I tried to reference this sort of universal APS. And all that I'm trying to get to is that there is order to the universe. There is this kind of which science would acknowledge, of course, that when we do an experiment and we can recreate it, we've kind of uncovered a piece of order of the universe, so to speak. And so this order, although our context is always changing, there is always this kind of order that can be depended on and relied upon. Otherwise, life would never emerge out of a just completely chaotic rule set that always changed. Nothing would ever get established. So in the past, I've kind of referenced this, what I call the universal APS, and that's kind of like the pure potentiality as well as the isomorphic potentiality, as far as what is possible, what is physically within possibility, the contours of the possible. So that's the universal APS, and that's how that's what we're trying to apprehend with the meat APS. We're in the sense of our little world and the little experience of our little narrative through life. We are building out sections of the representation of the so-called universal APS, and this is just what we need to get by in our life, in our little facet of meaning, and in relation to the processes that we need to be engaged in, the processes that we are engaged in. And so I believe that's the APS, that's the abstract phase space. This is this is what's produced out in one layer of the neurological operating system. So we have the abstract phase space and the spectacle being our concrete formation of the objects as they're up and appearing. Of course, codependently arising as types, so these objects appear as types even though they come into our context, and the mind projects that APS on top of our running experience to see objects as types of objects, and therefore we know how to deal with this in terms of a process. And it's processed because the unfolding narrative is a story through time that we're experiencing, our context, and if we want to control that and apprehend it and properly navigate it, we are talking about abstract processes of which we are always developing through life. That learning never really stops, but it's really the aversion to change and aversion to learning which is part and parcel with this participant society and the tendency to crust up in life and feel like nothing is new, nothing is possible, nothing is happening, and you're just waiting to grow old and die. This is not this is not life. This is not the limit of life. This is a depression. This is the APS flu. This is getting sick from the APS. This is our reality being quashed down into a depressive state, and really the life has been sucked out of us by being forced into this participant relationship with our society, that we are just meant to take on this very simplistic subset of life as if it's the whole of reality, and just do our part in society and grow old and get sick and old and crippled and then retire and then supposedly enjoy the dream of retirement all alone by ourselves and etc., and the whole thing falls apart, but you're too old to matter anymore to society because of course we have disconnected the generations from each other, we've disconnected the relationships, and nobody wants to listen to an old person anymore. Yeah, I guess this idolization of youth and all this kind of thing, all these false idols that we go after, like wealth and anything material that we think once we get it will be satisfied. These are called idols, and this is just part of the process of the which may potentially never end. We can just keep going on and on forever in this process of trying to complete ourself by fulfilling desires, and one after another as they fall, if they fall, more come up, and we are in an ever state of unsatisfaction, propelled and propagated by computational propaganda, including advertisement, which forces us to do certain behaviors because we are unaware and because we are suffering and hurting and we see no other way out. And so again, the result of participant society is ultimately individuals who are unsatisfied, who can never be satisfied by what's being presented, and the life force slowly gets sucked out of them and sucked out of us as a society, as a culture together. And of course, this static sort of view of life and of the world, and this dead view as opposed to animistic view of everything, results in more and more pain as we go along, as we think that our simplistic views and simplistic ideas of what reality is actually reality. Meanwhile, things keep changing and never stop changing, and out from underneath us the rug is pulled, and the structures that we believe in are slowly revealed to be nothing but outdated approximations, which are a source of pain and suffering. And of course there's a product for that. So that's the sorcery of the spectacle. That's an explanation of the APS. I got a bit into there of spectacle per se. So if we are talking about the neurological operating system, this is the standard model of memetics. So we are able to relate some of the layers of the neurological operating system to specific phenomena that we encounter, and importantly, we encounter them phenomenologically within our direct experience. So I do like to use the abstract concrete dichotomy to show how in our own perception these things are arising. So we have this abstract phase space, these types of things, these we can just close our eyes and think of what is a chair in and of itself, what is justice in and of itself. This navigation, this is the abstract phase space unfolding in front of us when we try and think of and define things in their most general senses, not in any particular sense. And of course, so that's the abstract phase space. The spectacle is that concrete flow of objects that's just going in front of our perception. It's not anything out there. It's not a thing out there. We're talking phenomenologically. The objects within your current view, within your current experience of reality, those objects that you're looking at are bound codependently arising with the types of things that they are. This is automatically happening due to pattern recognition up from the lower layers of the neurological operating system, going up, the like artifact, signal, so signal, symbol, artifact. I believe that's the lower triad we're looking at there. And of course things coming up from and out of our physical senses. They're coming up and bubbling up through our neurological network, being recognized as they go, sort of subconsciously, and bam, we are presented with objects in our field of view, objects in our field of perception. And these objects all have types, and this is how we can see the codependent arising between the spectacle and the abstract phase space. They do not ever come separate. Even, in fact, when we are trying to think of a chair in and of itself, or what is justice in and of itself, in fact, we are pulling up objects in our thought. So these are thought objects, purely sort of virtual in our mind. These are not being triggered by outside sensations of watching something and seeing something. So this is the codependent arising between the spectacle, or rather I should just say spectacle, and abstract phase space, or APS. And of course this type of phenomenological work is critical to do on your own, to be able to gain a sense of the model into which we can meaningfully speak about the spectacle and what it does, and speaking of how these facilities of the neurological operating system are exploited, and the kind of things that we have to do to come back out into a dynamic and fully actualized, fully isomorphic neurological operating system. So in other words, the APS is being expanded. This is the APS is our model. The abstract phase space is the model of reality, so to speak, so that when we encounter things, they come up to us as types of things. Most things are recognized. And again, as I mentioned earlier, when they become recognized so much, it becomes kind of second nature, and we really go into this autopilot mode without questioning. And this is basically the mechanism behind how we get stuck into our lives and just feel like doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's causing us more and more pain as we go along. Eventually that pain comes out as an acute situation in which the body forces us to listen and to stop doing that. We can't take it, we have enough. Either that, or we become shocked with an acute situation so badly that just to our core, our understanding of reality and of the universe and of our being and who we are and what we're doing here all gets shattered to the very depths of our core. This can be with violent trauma, or with even just the death of somebody really close to us, and we realize that that could be us that could have died. And what does that mean that I could have died, for example? We start thinking these things, and this, as difficult as it can be, might be the source of life, the source, the way that we end up coming back into life and out of depression, and back into a communion with the world around us, and that those feelings of meaning, of deep meaning. This all comes from, unfortunately, those kind of traumatic experiences and being forced through trauma, as we are en masse, as a whole world, as a whole civilization, as I've mentioned before, as the approximations necessary for a participant society to function end up drifting so far from the reality that's being experienced in context of the body, that simply things begin to snap and break. And again, this is why we need the meta-narrative to be known and to be shared, because when those things snap and break, we are simply going to go into further and further states of decay, disorder, of suffering, and in fact, as I said, even outright dropping of pretenses that certain organizations are supposedly good. Those things will be dropped, and again, the suffering will continue until awareness increases. And so in that way, I see it also as sort of an inevitable awakening of humanity, just because of the absolute limit that we are stretching towards in what we will accept. But again, without knowledge of the meta-narrative, there's almost no way to piece this all back together, and there's almost no way to cooperate with each other and make something meaningful out of that suffering and transform our story into the greatest story ever told by life on Earth, the greatest story ever experienced by life on Earth, the triumphant hero's journey, our collective hero's journey through the darkest time we could ever imagine, which the darkest times may even still be yet ahead. But again, this is all dependent on a sort of awakening and this Illuminati networking type concept, whereby those who are awake, let's get together, let's strategize, let's do something about this, let's make our movement known, let's I mean, it's happening. It's not that we can stop it or anything, but certainly we can try to end the prolonged suffering by bringing things back into such a harmony within our neighborhoods, within our communities, within our very relationships, not only with ourselves, by healing ultimately the great schism inflicted into us, but healing our relationships with each other. And this is the foundation of the Guild. So with that said, I don't think there's anything more that I can really get to as far as the topic of the sorcery of the spectacle. The subreddit is a media battlefield. You could say that those of us members who I've referred to as before as those having the spark, that was kind of one of my initial ways of giving a metaphor to this this degree of coherence, this membership, this inspiriting, this rebirth. We have not given up on the subreddit, but we certainly did get overwhelmed. The signal to noise ratio became a problem, and we've kind of made a number of distinct campaigns throughout the years and it's not even necessarily coordinated, but just that we've noticed that the spirit comes back to the sub in often in waves, and and currently I would say we are in the crest of another wave. The quality of content on the sub has been really, really good the last even couple months, and this is much longer than we normally would be able to sustain such a thing. So it seems like care and attention has been directed towards the sub, and I don't really know what to do about the problem of Reddit and its siloing right now. Like I don't know how to fix Reddit. There is no real fixing of Reddit. It's a horribly siloed platform. In other words, it's completely engulfed in this APS cancer, as we call it, whereby everything is supposed to have its own place. So you can never speak holistically like this. Like the amount of things, like the different areas that I've gotten into with this media expression piece so far is just, there's so many facets, it's mind-boggling. But the way that Reddit works is that I have to take each of these facets and separate them off, and then go find the community that talks about only that, and then only will I be allowed to talk about that one facet of the thing, and I'll never be able to reference the rest of it, for fear of being basically banned or kicked or ignored, or people having no idea what it has to what what their special little topic has to do with anything else. And this is kind of the way that Reddit is siloed. Not to mention the mediation of trust, and especially the moderation in how we vote up and down things. When we give votes, they're tallied in a private, centralized computer space. So if those votes are manipulated, we have no way of telling. And so, as I might have gotten into it, this is an insanely effective tool of computational propaganda, and that is to give the impression that it's actually you who has this opinion, that it's actually you, like the capital U, as in you as in a community. You all share this particular liking or aversion of a particular thing. So the vote counts get manipulated behind the scenes. We have no idea what the true vote of anything is. If what's been spoken of triggered off or tipped off some algorithms that got too close to potentially liberating topics or whatever, or openly opposing or whatever, which is never a good idea, not ever necessary, but opposing the state or the spectacle, then these things can be automatically downvoted, and when we see that, we think that it was just us, it was our collective activity as a community that downvoted it. And this, of course, is one of the most insane signals, craziest signals, most effective signals, if you can think about it. To be told something, to be told a truth, to be told an opinion, and to be told that opinion is your opinion. And not even to be told directly, but by the media itself, to have the impression given to you that your peers have approved or have some certain opinion. And in fact, this is simply a facet of computational propaganda, that a certain topic or subject or category is to be avoided, or it means that you're this identity or that identity, and it's not our identity, and therefore we are going to expel that expression and anybody to do with it, and so say we all, so say the community. We have spoken. Meanwhile, we don't know if any of the votes were even from your peers or even from that community. It's counted in a black box, private GovCorp scenario. So the sorcery of the spectacle is really the necessary apparatuses that are essentially our various organs which have been harvested in order to sustain a participant society. This is what the spectacle depends on, is this kind of sorcerous manipulation of people via signs, which we believe to take to have certain concrete meanings which are unchanging, meanings in which we ignore the reality of the context and do this kind of magical thinking and magical way of, without realizing, of navigating reality, just filling in the blanks, and this is what the mind is doing automatically for us. But we are taught and trained to avoid the body, to suppress the body, to suppress emotions, to submit to the machine, and to enclose or avoid any kind of movement which is potentially freeing of the so-called slaves. This embodiment process, having the Spirit of God come to you, a communion with God, a communion between your mind and your body. This is the ultimate authority, the ultimate liberating authority within you. and in a participant society, it must be actively quashed. So yeah, I guess I'll just carry on a little bit about Sorcery the Spectacle and the subreddit as a media battlefield. And of course, I'm not just intending to complain about Reddit. I'm simply illuminating the externalization of organs and in the context of the participant society. So, of course, the dashboard software that we are developing, the AO, the DEC protocol, as well as the Scepter platform. All this technology is intended to come together to provide a robust, unenclosable, externalized memory, intentionally isomorphic and coherent with the neurological operating system, which we have been deeply researching the last few years, and in fact implementing in practice with the Portal Mountain hyperstition. So this is really what we've sort of been waiting for as far as technology is concerned. Again, not that the technology is necessary. We have essentially done this. We have bootstrapped at least the basic core within our own small networks of this type of a dashboard operating system, even running on the index card protocol. The important part is the isomorphic externalization of memory. That, in other words, that it's isomorphic with the neurological operating system. In other words, that we are representing a phenomena which we are able to witness and observe in our own experience of perception. And so this is how we are able to make sure that that what we express onto paper or onto computer is going to have a high mimetic fluidity, a high selectability, because we are already formatting it in a way that's coherent with the processes of perception, which indeed this can be verified. And so we do have some software which basically is an implementation of DEC protocol. We have software already. I believe we have achieved node-to-node updating of the, as I've called it in the past, the holoculture database. This is just the collection of the DEC, the actual information, the externalized memory. I've called it a holoculture database in the past. So we basically have this up and running. We are currently filling it in and using it as part of the bootstrap. We are hoping that this will be immediately useful amongst our close network who can use this software, the AO, and use it to start to further on of bootstrapping of this whole operating system, this program, this process. And really kick off this network intentionally with technological augmentations, and hopefully really start to gain some awareness even outside of our network, and really be able to show kind of proof of concept. and right now I feel like so many things have come together, and that it's really time for me to make these expressions and to put together this media expression, and to really try to do justice to the experience that I've been blessed with over the past couple years, both in my church and with Portal Mountain, the SOTS Telegram network, my small groups, just all these things that I'm very thankful for to have the experience, and very grateful that to all of you who are reading this and listening and encountering our work on the network, and ultimately on your own journeys of increasing coherence. I applaud you for that. I love you for that. We are like brothers and sisters, and this as I hope I've been able to paint a picture, this type of work is really, this is the emergence of the global neurological network, a sort of global brain or a global mind. We are now implementing the technical infrastructure necessary for the isomorphic externalization of memory. So very constrained form of this externalized memory, whereby it comes with these sideband channels. It's never alone in context. We have the whole system up and running, kind of thing, and this is what's necessary for being able to work together, in a way that just flows, that our behavior can be easily selected for and flowing across the network, and increasing of coherence between peers, the finding and sensing of better ways to do things, and finally the organization of all this, just that we finally as a species kind of are able to get our shit together, even on pen and paper. This, I suppose, has been thousands of years in coming, and we just need to get out of the abstractions of the mind and start peeling the rubber against the road, against the pavement, and laying a massive patch here. The guild is that massive patch we are laying across our networks, and there's no limit to this. And the hyperstition that we are engaged in is peace on earth. This is the type of approach that gives a broad nuance to all the facets of these wicked problems that are all coming together all at once and pushing us all into insane amounts of suffering. If you're not feeling it, you better feel lucky and start having some compassion, not only for yourself but for others, and do so before it's too late, before you also get sucked in, even assuming that you have any free time at all right now. Please do that justice. If you have free time, work together, give this work some thought, and try to heal yourself, heal this great schism. Notice what has been said here, and that there truly is a duty to life, and there is more to life, and it's not about just sitting around and growing old and working and then retiring and ordering people around while sitting on fat stacks until your death. There's more to it than that. We shouldn't be throwing away all of this grace and bounty that has been bestowed upon us by the insanely hard work of our ancestors. Yeah, so that's the context. There's a big meaningful context here. Our earth is on fire. The fires are spreading. They will come to your door. There's no way to avoid this, and sometimes some of the shocks will be very rapid and very painful, and we need to spread this type of work as fast as possible. That way we have the seeds planted that when the fertile ground of suffering comes along, that we have something meaningful to do about it, aside from simply killing ourselves, which is only leaving those left who will not kill themselves. Thus, the people who saw the problem the deepest and suffered the most have offed themselves and taken the easy way out, so to speak. I'm not trying to alienate anybody. I know the suffering is insane. But I guess I'm just getting to that one note. Whenever I hear about suicide from all this kind of suffering, it makes me think that the only ones left are the ones who can take this suffering and bear through it. And that's the population that's left over. The ones who can take the suffering the most. So we become the super selected for sufferability of our species, and we just keep carrying on and never speaking out and fixing the problems of the world, and we keep those who do have the deep insights and the sorrow, unfortunately, who have not achieved membership but are being pressed through that. You just have to hold on, and hopefully the guild is on the way very shortly to your proximity, and somebody will be there to hopefully rescue you in a way and give guidance, to reestablish meaning in your life, and to help you to stop alienating your own body and taking care of the areas of concern throughout your life and throughout your context, and just watching things get better and better, and helping you through with that, and out of love and out of unconditional love, and the guild loves you. But we need to establish this. We need to make aware the meta narrative of what's happening here, and the various efforts of religion to bring us into membership, but and also the hypocritical so-called necessities of protecting us and keeping us going as is in a participant paradigm. The guild is on its way. Anyways, that's what my point is. And the last kind of area here I wanted to get into was critical activism. So this is amazing. I feel like I'm almost done. This is the last topic that I even had in mind. So I'm already at 3 hours today. Thankfully, so I had something to eat on my break. Still feeling pretty good. So before I get into critical activism, I'm just gonna take another quick break, and just so I can cut up this segment, because we're at about an hour and a half right now on this particular recording, and I think that's probably ideal or perfect. Even under an hour would be great for people listening on lunch breaks or whatnot, but hour and a half, fine. Can be broken into two. This seems ideal. So this is the reason why I'm going to cut this right now and jump right back into critical activism and think about the problems of the world, all the various constraints which are being breached because nobody has the capacity or the awareness to care about them, and we are simply suffering, and the only thing we can seem to do about this is lash out and cry for help. Meanwhile, we simply have no idea what we're doing out of ignorance to actually address these breaches of constraint. That's another way that I'll say a problem. A problem is a breach of constraint made aware. So we can articulate problems. It's good to articulate problems, and then what do we do about them? My argument here is that the only thing we can do about them to actually solve them at their root is to do this journey towards increasing coherence. There is no political solution. There is no solution that we can throw money at to actually fix the root of any of these problems. The problem is that our society at large is one giant approximation of reality, which is outdated and crusty. It's always old, it's hardly ever adapting, it's adapting way too slow to ever keep up, and it's never nuanced enough to take into account the sensing of the context of the bodies in which are participating in this society. So this is just a quick summary of where I'm going to go with critical activism. That person has something wrong with their car. And there they are going down the highway. So it's constraints obviously being breached. I'm sure they have no idea what the problem is. And so here we have another metaphor for society and its problems at large. And I will be back.